give me a challenge, give me an exercise, give me something to learn, tell me a book to read, whatever. I just needed something. I needed a coach. I was used to having a coach guide me in my athletics, and then all of a sudden I was on my own. And I just wanted someone who was successful at what they did to give me some coaching, to give me some exercises on how I could reach that same level in life. And so that's what I did, and I was obsessed with learning.
Hey everyone, it's Ed O'Keefe, and welcome to the Ed O'Keefe Show, behind the scenes of greatness. Today I have a very, very special guest and good friend, Lewis Howes. You've probably heard of him. He is currently a New York Times bestseller for his book called The School of Greatness. Lewis and I were introduced by a good friend, Drew Canoli, and Lewis has an amazing story of how he went from a high-level athlete to an injury, a career-ending injury, which made him go a path of entrepreneurship. And he figured out some amazing things with like LinkedIn, which then he dominated that space for a year or two, or maybe even a little longer than that. And nowadays he teaches phenomenal courses over at lewishowes.com on his webinars, on how to hold webinars for your business, how to build the life that you want, and then orchestrate a business around it. This interview is great because we got a chance to talk about a lot of things like how Lewis learns, how he assimilates information rapidly, how he finds mentors, how he takes action, and then a surprising story about which story out of his entire book. I asked him to tell a story out of all the stories that would be the most impactful. And I gotta tell you, this story is profound about overcoming obstacles and dealing with adversity. Lewis went on to tell me about how he created the game plan for his New York Times bestseller, how he approaches very well-known people to be on his podcast. And really, him and I just go back and forth for this interview. So I know you'll love it. Please let me know what you think of it and share it with those who could benefit from it. So without further ado, everybody, Mr. Lewis Howes. All right, Lewis, what is up, brother?
What's going on, man?
You are. We're excited here to have you here on the Ed O'Keefe Show and bring the man who's behind the School of Greatness to our listeners. And I was just telling everybody how highly I think of you, and you've really come off a phenomenal year, bro. So why don't
Nice, man.
Yeah. So Lewis Howes, do you mind sharing a little bit of background on how you got to creating one of the top podcasts for success, self-development on the internet, and launching this New York Times bestseller, The School of Greatness?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's been a long journey. I'm 32 years old, and it's been a lot of doing two things over and over. First is dreaming really big and having passion about my dreams from an early age. Originally it was to play sports in college and then to be a professional athlete. And then when that ended, it was discovering new dreams. So the consistent theme is dreaming really big and doing things that seem almost impossible to achieve at the time when there's no evidence to achieve them, but something that would really excite me to stay consistently taking action over time. And that's through sports and business. I've had these big dreams. So that's one, is having the dreams, and then number two is figuring out whatever it takes along the way to make it happen, and developing new tools and skills for me to become the person I need to be in order to achieve my dreams. And that's kind of the vague answer, the general answer, I guess, for you. But that's what it's been.
Yeah, and what's really cool about that, I was actually the note I made when you were talking was like it's a good contextual framework to operate within. So like, for example, you mentioned sports and then business and relationship. You can apply that framework to anything that you do. Now, let's dive into your history with sports and athletes. I actually think that's, you and I haven't even really spoken much about our backgrounds in sports. I've just But I feel that's one of the reasons why you and I connect, because I kind of get some of your personality without having to try to,
Sure.
So share, but the difference is you're like actually a physical freak, and I.
And oh no, man, you're doing these like Navy SEAL training stuff that I don't know if I can handle right now. So
Yeah,
it's pretty
wow. To just give you a month of just getting your endurance up, and you'd kill it.
I ran 3 miles last night, and I was dying in 24 minutes, and I was just like, I don't know if I can run anymore. So, but yeah, a little bit about my sports background. I was the gangly, tall, awkward kid growing up in middle school. And then in high school, I kind of developed into my body and started to put some meat on it and got my coordination under me. And I really started to, I remember in 6th and 7th grade and 8th grade, I would go to the local rec basketball court, and all the high school varsity kids were playing, like every night. They would just play full court, 5-on-5, and there would be 5 or 6 different teams waiting. And then winner stays, right? So I would go, and I started to get really good because I was just playing with the varsity guys at the local high school, and I started getting on teams that always won. So I remember we would just like constantly play all night long, and that really developed my mindset. It's like going against these fresh varsity guys as 11, 12, 13-year-old. And being able to hang, I was intimidated. I wasn't as good as them, obviously, but I was able to kind of hold my own in some elements. And I was always the scrappiest person. So I was always the one who got the loose balls. I would crash the boards every time someone, shot a three-pointer and get the loose ball and pass it back out. So I was that utility player that became valuable for everyone because everyone else just wanted to sit back and shoot threes when I was willing to do the hard work. And that's what allowed me to stay on the teams that I was playing early on. And then as I started to develop as an athlete and become more of the star of the team in high school, things like that, I had bigger dreams. I was like, okay, I'm good enough to play at a top level in high school in these sports, football, basketball, baseball, track. And then it was the dream to, play in college and be an All-American. And so each season of my life, each stage of my life, I would create new dreams for myself. And then when I was in college, I was a 2-sport All-American in football and the decathlon. My senior year, I got both of those. And I remember having to make a choice. I was like, I really was falling in love with the decathlon, and I'd only done it for about a year. And I was just scratching the surface of my capabilities in track and field. And I said, okay, I can train for the next 4 years in the hopes of going to the national, the Olympic trials for the USA and see what's possible. They only take 3 guys. But at that time, there were some freak athletes in the decathlon, and there still are today. And I was just like, the chances of me in 4 years getting in the top 3 are very slim. Maybe I could make it to the national championships, but the top 3, I just knew what these guys' marks were in the decathlon, and I was just like, even if I gave my best and trained, like, just physically, I don't know if I can jump higher than when I'm jumping, run faster than these marks. And so I said, okay, well, I have a decision. I'm going to go play football right now then and give up on the dream of playing the Olympics, because that was a childhood dream. So I went to play arena football. I had some NFL tryouts, and they didn't work out. So I went to go play arena football in the hopes of getting some more experience and then moving up to the NFL. But I got injured in my rookie season, or broke my wrist in the second game, and then I played the final 14 games with a broken wrist. I just taped it up.
Wow, is that right? I didn't know that. I knew you got injured. I didn't know you actually played the rest of the season. Wow, man.
It was the second game. It sucked. It was miserable. I had actually broken my wrist in high school, my junior year, and never got it set. And so I just kind of like healed it through playing on it, I guess. I don't know. It was always painful until I broke it again in arena football. And then I knew right when it happened, I dove for a ball. I was playing wide receiver, and I dove for a ball into a wall, and it snapped when I hit the wall.
Wow.
And I knew the feeling right away because it happened before, and I was like, oh, mother, this thing just broke. But I stayed in the game. We actually scored in the next play, and I was the holder for the place kicker. So it was like the most painful experience, just like catching the ball after that. So I went to go get an x-rayed the next day to the doctor, and he was like, yep, it's broken. Here you can see the break. And I said, don't tell the coaches, because I said, can I play on it? He said, it's not going to do any more damage necessarily, but you're going to be in a lot of pain. And I said, I can deal with the pain. I can't deal with not playing. And so I said, just don't tell the coaches whatever you do. I'm going to tape it up and I'm going to play. And if I can't perform, then that's on me. And I played the next 14 games with, just a taped up wrist, and I really couldn't bend it back. I would catch a lot with my left hand and just use my right hand to guide the ball coming in. And kind of grunted it out. But I'd already been through that type of pain after I'd broken it before that, I was like, well, I can handle it. And then at the end of the season, I went back to the doctor and had surgery. And he was like, well, it actually did more damage. The bone had crumbled, so we can't even put screws in it because the bone is so small, torn down now. So they just took a bone out of my hip and put it in my wrist to kind of mend the bone together. So that was 6 months in a full arm cast from that point, and it ended my career playing football. I pretty much had about a year and a half of recovery after that to rehab and just get the strength back. And at that point, I was 24, 25, and it was kind of too late to come back in hopes of going to the NFL. I could have come back and played arena again, but it didn't make sense to me anymore because you only make, a few $100 a week in arena football. So.
Yeah, so you were 20. I think one of the I write about this and I talk about this by mentoring a lot of athletes, and I have friends who are in the UFC right now, and I have friends who are aspiring fighters. We have a gal I coached in high school who's now on the U.S. national bobsledding team, and what I think a lot of people don't understand about high-level athletes is what comes after that kind of, you've been putting everything emotionally and intensely into that. And I would call it almost like a micro, unifocus. Like you can't really have a balanced, quote unquote, life. So what happened after your sports? Because I know it all led to where you are now. So do you mind sharing some of that?
I was, so after that I moved in with my sister, Catherine, who lived in Columbus, Ohio. Because I didn't have any money and I didn't have anywhere to stay. So she let me come crash on her couch for a year and a half. During that time, I was in the depression phase. A lot of athletes go through this when they get injured and they have to retire or they just end their career. It's kind of like, I put all my focus and energy, all my hopes and dreams into this one thing. Like you said, there was no balance in my life to develop other skills. It's not like I actually went to school to learn. I went to school to go play football. And it was just kind of like this depressing denial phase of like, okay, I'm gonna recover in like 6 weeks and be able to get back out there and make it happen. And then every 6 weeks I'd have to get a new cast on, and the doctor would say it's another 6 weeks, it's another 6 weeks, it's another 6 weeks, until it's just like, this sucks. What am I gonna do with my life?
Right.
So early on, I started to just reach out to mentors, men who were successful in the business world in different industries. And just said, hey, can you give me some guidance? Can you just share with me, give me a challenge, give me an exercise, give me something to learn, tell me a book to read, whatever. I just needed something. I needed a coach. I was used to having a coach guide me in my athletics, and then all of a sudden I was on my own. And I just wanted someone who was successful at what they did to give me some coaching, to give me some exercises on how I could reach that same level in life. And so that's what I did, and I was obsessed with learning. I just became obsessed with saying, okay, how can I make, my life a game, and what's the playbook that I need to read in order to master the game of life, essentially, and who are the coaches and the players I need to surround myself with? What's the team I need to be around to make it to the Super Bowl of life? And that's essentially how I started to apply my life. It wasn't pretty in the first year and a half because I wasn't making any money, and I felt like a homeless bum who was a boy because I couldn't even afford my own rent.
Right.
Sleeping on my sister's couch. So I had a lot of, self-doubt and insecurities about, am I ever going to be able to make money? And do I have to get a job? What's that going to look like? Am I going to be miserable for the rest of my life? Who would pay me for anything? Like, I didn't know what people would pay me for because I didn't have any skills, except for, I could coach your son in football or something, So that was
right, and kind of, which is like what the traditional people will tell you, like, well, you're physically shaped, maybe you should start doing personal training,
right.
Or and then you're like, oh, yeah, you can make a lot of money at $50 an hour, but if you start doing the math on that, it's not going to give you the life you want.
Exactly.
You didn't go from being a pro athlete aspiring to take it to the next level to now wanting to just do what other people are doing, right?
Exactly. And I got this taste, even though, even though I wasn't in the NFL, making like NFL money and having that lifestyle, I had this taste of a lifestyle where we got up, we trained for 4 hours, and then we had the rest of the day off.
Yeah.
And I was like, and we got to go play on the weekends in front of whatever, 15, 20,000 people and feel like gladiators for 4 hours. And it was just like, oh man, this is an amazing feeling that I get to just train really hard on what I'm passionate about, then have flexible hours the rest of the day, and prepare for something that's, gets to perform and get to showcase my talents in front of people that would be inspired. And so I had this taste, and I was like, how can I recreate that taste every day where I train really hard for something and then prepare for big moments like it's a competition, it's a battle, it's an inspiring moment to move people into action in their own life. As on the football field, I never thought of myself as an athlete. I thought of myself as an inspiring artist. And it was always my mission to win. But I remember just understanding that, people are here to be inspired as well. They want you to win. They want to see great things, but they're really here to see miracles happen and see magic happen on the field, on the basketball court. And we are the artists able to create magic for people and just show them what's possible in their lives. And it was always the greatest moments when I got to go after the game, whether we won or lost, after the game, walking into the locker room, towards the locker room and getting like the hugs from all the fans and the high fives and saying hi to the family members, things like that. And people would come up to me and be like, that one play, it's always going to stay in my mind, what you did and how you caught that ball and the effort that you gave there, like it inspires me to go do something better in my life. Like that's what I live for, is all the hard work and energy putting into it for those opportunities to create magical moments that inspire whoever's watching. And that's what I've wanted to recreate in my life. Now I get to do similar things. I get to perform and speak in front of audiences. I get to do workshops. I get to do videos and podcasts. And train really, really hard during the day to prepare for these moments of the game time. And I just recreated it in a different way.
Yeah, and actually now looking back on your life, that makes total sense. Like the pattern's right there, correct?
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
So when did, one of the things that you talk about in your book, whether literally you're talking about it or it just kind of is the pattern, is this something that impresses me about you is your ability to focus, right? And so when it sounds like you kind of stumbled upon LinkedIn and realized there was like, oh wow, there's something here. Can you share a little more about that, how that worked and the story?
Yeah, early on, one of the mentors I was talking to, one of the guys was like, there's a new site out called LinkedIn. Why don't you check it out? It's a great place where people are finding jobs and opportunities in the business world. And I was just like, okay, I'd never heard of it before. I was, one of the first colleges that got accepted on Facebook back in 2004, 2005, whenever that was. And so I knew about social networking sites back then. I was on MySpace and Facebook. And I think at the time, LinkedIn had like 12 million people on it. And I just said, okay, he told me something to do and told me to check out something, so I'm going to do it. And I just started doing it for about 6 to 8 hours a day for the next year and a half.
Yep.
It was just kind of like by random luck that this mentor was like, oh, I heard in the news that this site is helping people. Why don't you check it out? And so I just attached myself to it because I trusted him and I saw potential with it. I saw that it was kind of confusing. Like it took me a while to actually figure out, and I'm pretty quick at learning things.
Yep.
So I was like, if this is confusing for me, it's probably confusing for a lot of people who have no clue about social networking sites at the time. This was 2007, 2008, 2009. And, the older generation wasn't hip to social networking sites and how to use them at that time. So I just started using it for my own personal needs. I optimized my profile, and then I would reach out to CEOs and business leaders one by one and message them to see if I could pick their brain and see if I could get on a phone call with them or meet them in person, just to learn about how they got to where they are and their success. So I was interviewing people early on just for my own personal research. And the more I did this, people just started emailing me through LinkedIn saying, wow, you have a great looking profile, and I see that you're connected to so-and-so who I've been looking to connect with for my business. Can you make an introduction, and can you help me optimize my profile? So I just started helping friends out for free early on, and just like, yeah, I'll help you out, no problem. And then as I started doing this, they were so blown away by the results they were getting. They were like, you should charge for this. I was like, really? People would pay me to do this? And sure enough, quickly after, the money started to come in from doing one-on-one profile makeovers and consulting for people with LinkedIn. Then I started hosting LinkedIn networking events around the country. So I did 20 events in about a 13-month period all around the country where 300 to 500 people would show up. And all I did was promote them using LinkedIn, the people in those local communities, in those industries. And so I started making a little bit of money here and there from events, from sponsorships, from consulting fees, from making introductions and getting commissions and referrals off of business leads. To then I wrote a book because another mentor was like, you got to write this information down and share it to the world, because you're repeating the same thing over and over by doing these consulting sessions. You're essentially saying the same thing. Why not just make it accessible for everyone? And that way you have a product. So I said, okay, I have no clue what to do or how to write a book. I've never done this. But I had him guide me and work with me because he had written a number of books before. So the whole time I was just like, how can I leverage this to make more money? And then another opportunity to make money. And how can I leverage everything that I do into offering value to people and making sure that I'm getting paid for it? And that was the early stages of just like, I make $50 for helping someone one-on-one, and then $100 and $200, and I just leveraged over and over and over and learned and grew in that process until I started doing my first webinar and online courses, and that's when everything changed.
See, that was a great operating. I was going to say, so what I'm picking up, one of my questions was, how do you learn? So what I'm picking up is you're a great student, because if you have a mentor you trust and they tell you what to do, you're not sitting there questioning them. You just went and did it. Yeah.
That's it.
Take it very
literal. It's kind of like ignorance. Yeah. I'm just like, I don't know, so let me just go all in,
Yeah.
It's like I never analyzed anything. I didn't question. I just said, okay, I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah, which is not what most. You have a lot of students. I have students.
Yeah.
It's not what a lot of people do, and it's too easy to get distracted with what might seem like the next cool thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where when I look back on the last 2 years, man, or last 4 years, I was thinking about this today. I was like, man, there's really only been 2 things that I've done very, very well.
Right.
And I've done 98% of the other things have just been, finding my way to the 2 things, or just clutter,
Yep.
So you figured out by asking, how could I leverage this? And you kept asking, how can I leverage it? That's how you stumbled into figuring out webinars?
Yeah.
Wow.
I would continually ask successful people what they do, how they got there. And I hosted this one event in Cleveland, Ohio, where this LinkedIn event that I was doing. And one of the guys who was sponsoring it showed up, and there was 500 people. And he was like, how did you get this many people to show up for this event? And I was like, LinkedIn. He's like, dude, you got to start going to conferences and start talking about this and meeting other marketers online who are experts in other social media topics, because you got to get your name out there. And I said, okay, I've never been to a conference. What do you mean? Where should I go? And he's like, there's one coming up in a couple months in Vegas called Affiliate Summit. You should go to it. And so I just said, okay, I want to sign up for this event. And I went there, and I saw the guy there who was sponsoring my event. And I just said, hey, what's up, man? And at that moment, another guy walked by him named Joel Comm.
Yeah.
And my buddy Jim, he said, hey, you got to meet this guy, Lewis Howes. He's talking all about LinkedIn. And at the time, Joel Comm was a pretty big name, New York Times bestseller, and doing a lot of things online marketing. And he says, yo, cool, man. tell me, why should I invest in LinkedIn? Why should I use it? And I just said like a 30-second pitch. And they said, cool, all right, I like it. He said, best of luck to you. And then a couple months later, he emails me and says, hey, man, I've got this book coming out about Twitter, and I'm doing this online social media boot camp. And I'm bringing on different experts to talk about, how to leverage social media. I've got the Twitter person, I've got the Facebook person, I've got the YouTube person. I don't know anyone else talking about LinkedIn or anyone who's as passionate as you. So I figured I'd ask you and see if you wanted to come on and do a presentation. And I said, absolutely. But I had never heard of a webinar before, and I had no clue what he really wanted me to do. And so he said, cool, just get your slides together. Here's your time slot. And also you're going to sell a product at the end that will share 50% commission. I said, awesome, cool. I'll talk to you then. And I was like so excited, but I was also terrified because I was like, I've never really spoken in front of an audience. I have no clue how to write a sales page or put a product up or do anything. I was just clueless. And so I had reached out to a buddy of mine who had done this, and I said, hey, can you help guide me along the way? And the whole time I just found people that were great at it already and got advice from them and feedback from them and support. I was building my team. And I did this webinar, essentially terrified. My slides were horrible looking. I had no clue what I was doing. I didn't even have a sales page. I just had a PayPal link because I couldn't even get it together. So I just said, here's a PayPal link. I'm going to deliver something in 2 weeks to you guys. It's not even ready yet. So, buy it here if you want it. And we closed on the webinar. And before this, I maybe made $3,000 in a month from hustling, doing these events, doing one-on-one consulting, schlepping books around for $10 a pop, just really working hard. And when I shut the webinar down and opened up my email, it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life, other than probably my first girlfriend that I got to take her shirt off or something. It was incredible. Every line, it said, you've received payment on my screen.
Yeah.
And I opened up the PayPal account and said $6,200 in my account. And at the time, as a 24-year-old who was struggling just to make a few $1,000s, going all around the country and hustling, still at this time I moved from my sister's couch to my brother's. I was paying $250 a month for a room at my brother's house. $6,200 was, I felt like the richest man in the world. I was screaming, running around the house, going nuts.
Yeah.
Because I felt like, okay, here's something that it makes sense now to get in front of a larger audience, to offer great value for free. And then for people that want more training or whatever else to help them out, they can sign up for something else. And I said, I could do this every single day for the rest of my life if I'm going to make $6,200 in an hour.
Totally.
And essentially the last 6.5, 7 years, I've done, at least a webinar a week, many more in a week usually. And it's essentially, what I put a lot of my energy. It's one of the main things I put you said there's 2 things you do. It's this is one of the main 2 things that I do that's been consistently, I've just been a bulldog of being consistently getting better at it and performing at it over time, where a lot of people, I had a business partner for a while who we built our business on webinars and creating great information and courses and then delivering on webinars. And one of the reasons why I wanted to get out of that company and be on my own is because he was constantly distracted with the shiny new object. Let's try this, let's try this, let's try this. And I was just like, dude, this is what's working. Let's stick to it and just become the best at this.
Yeah.
So that's where it's been.
Yeah. By the way, I think for everyone listening, if Lewis has at lewishowes.com, and we'll have the links in the show notes and everything, a phenomenal webinar training course that can walk you through exactly what he just talked about. What I wanted to say, though, was I think that most people who make it in being their own entrepreneur and kind of living their life the way they want, they push themselves to that point where there's that one day where they look at their inbox or they see the orders, and that drug and that high. Yeah. I mean, I think looking in there and seeing one of my clients who has a 8-figure business says he still lets all his sales come to his inbox every day.
Absolutely. It's amazing.
So he sees it. Yeah. I think it's awesome, bro. And yeah, you kind of got to bulldog your way to that because there's some pivots you got to make. So I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah, I'm not sure, like, I don't know, some engineer whiz that's just really smart and figured out some system or analysis or, I don't know, code or something that you can apply to some new tool or thing online or, you know, scientific thing that you can raise money around. I just feel like this is the way to go, is to find something, become really great at something, keep it simple, and then take consistent action over a long period of time at that one or two things until you have a system. Like you said with your, you know, one of your businesses, you're doing great with it, you're making 7 figures, and it's kind of running on its own now, but you put a lot of time and energy probably doing boring things over and over and over again that weren't sexy to be great at something, and then you develop the systems around it, and now you're profiting from that, as opposed to once it got challenging or boring, you didn't jump ship and go do something else and have an average result based on that. You're just like, okay, this is making money, it's working, and it's adding value to people. And that's, I think, the challenge is, like, you got to do things that are not sexy over and over again. You know, my podcast, although it's fun for me, I did 150 episodes this last year. That's a lot of time interviewing people or just getting on and doing the same thing over and over, when essentially I know what people are going to say when I ask a certain question because they're all very similar answers.
Yeah.
But it's like, while other people get excited and then launch a podcast, and then 20 episodes in, they realize they're not getting any traction and they're not making any money, and they're like, well, what's the point? You know, I've been able to say, okay, 3 years in now, I've been consistently doing it every single week. And it is a lot of work, and it isn't sexy sometimes, but I have a blast with it, and it's starting to pay off dividends now.
Yeah, and God, there was a book I read years ago. It's called Mastery by
Robert Greene.
No, this one's actually, I'm going to send this to you. This is the most, you know how they I don't know if you asked this question. Tim Ferriss asked it a lot. Like, what's the number one book you recommended to all your friends? Blah blah blah. Yeah. There's a guy Tim Peering is his name. I'll send it to you. He went off the radar for so many years, but one of the things he said in his book was, all success is found in the last third of the race, and most people never get past the first third, let alone the second third. And so, when you were sharing that story of how, you were in your sister's house and you're stumbling, fumbling, and just, you didn't say that, but I love that grind. I think that being broke period, and I don't think it's a mandatory part, because I would hate to install that belief system in someone's head. But for me, it was just real, and it was one of those phases of life that I look back on with so much gratefulness, because it forged grit in me that most people don't ever get the opportunity to experience.
Exactly, and especially if you're not an athlete or you haven't been through sports, I don't think you experience the type of pain and depression and frustration. If you haven't experienced that in sports, then it's a lot more demanding and challenging to overcome in your real life. If you're broke and down and out, it's a lot harder to break through that, I think. And that's where people take the easy road out or go get a job that they hate just because they're like, well, there's no other options and I don't want to feel this pain anymore. Whereas guys, it sounds like we're me and you, thrive on pain and experiencing pain, obviously not in a harmful way that's going to break our arms or something, but experiencing pain and the fact that it's building this threshold for us to experience the uncertainty in the future and handle it with ease and calm under the pressure. For me, I always want to do something every single day that experiences physical and emotional and mental pain in a positive way.
Yeah.
To develop that muscle when crazy stuff happens, and most people can't control their emotions or deal with it. And that's why I want to develop that muscle so I can handle anything thrown my way in the future.
Yeah, man. I love it. So, Man, I have so many questions for you. But one thing I want to ask. Well, so I got to ask you. So how was it? You met Joe Cena from Spartan, had you on his
Yeah.
podcast. He's one who, like, I mean, if he was listening to this like micro part of this interview, he'd be like, because he loves that psychotic
Yes.
space, you know. So what was it? This is kind of random. What was it like meeting Joe?
Oh, he's actually a pretty nice guy. He's pretty intense, but the thing I liked about him is he wants to learn with the best of them. Like I had him on my podcast, then he had me on his podcast, and what I realized is like he isn't this know-it-all.
Totally.
He really wants to learn, and he's interviewing all these people who, a lot of them are great experts at what they do, but most of them probably aren't as successful in business as him. But he's still interviewing them, and at least from my perspective, his attentiveness, his presence, his curiosity was very strong. That he just wants to learn from everyone, and I think that's an attribute of a champion and someone who's going to be successful is they're always willing to learn from anyone. Doesn't matter who they are, what background, even if they're broke. We can learn something from anyone, even if it's what not to do. We can learn that from someone. So.
Yeah. So, man. Yeah. In fact, I'm gonna ask you for an intro to him, just because he's
Sure.
he's one of the more he's getting more corporate-esque. His book just came. Not him personally, but. Spartan's taking off.
It's getting huge.
And I love it, bro, because that and Tough Mudder. I mean, I love doing CrossFit every day, but my body frame is really not, I'm never going to be a world champion at CrossFit, where Spartan, I probably wouldn't do that either, but I think my body frame is better. It'd be fun. So, hey, speaking of
I
which.
just did my first Spartan last month, and it was awesome, man.
Oh, you did? Oh,
yeah.
Get out of here. We'll have to figure out one to do together. That'd be awesome. And
for sure, man. Yeah.
And
I only do the sprints though, like the 3 to 5 miles. That's about as far as I can go.
How long does that take you?
Well, I did the 5 miler. It was like 5.2, I think, in LA. And here's the thing: I did it with 2 other guys. One of my buddies who's pretty fast and great in distance and lean and skinny. We went with another guy, a buddy of mine, who is sponsored by Spartan. He actually looks like a Spartan athlete. His name is Austin Ray. He's a big Instagram, personality. And he essentially was just a pure sprinter. So he was like walking and exhausted the whole time. So we were just like, we would run each obstacle and then wait for like 5 minutes for him. And, because I wanted to make sure he was with us. And I think we could have done a lot better, but we still finished. I can't remember. We finished pretty good time, even waiting and sitting around. Like we weren't even tired really.
Like is that like a 2-hour episode, or is that for 5 miles? Is that like a 3-hour episode?
Yeah, we did it in I think it was like 140 for what we did.
Oh, cool.
But that was a lot of like sitting, standing.
Yeah.
Like we did the obstacles twice just to see if we could do it better the second time. So. I mean, only one obstacle I had to do burpees on. So we had like 20 obstacles, and one of them, the one that I was like, oh, this is gonna be easy for me, I didn't get.
Get out of here.
Yeah, I was so mad. It was a spear throw.
That's so funny.
Because I was a javelin thrower, so I was like, oh, this will be easy. And it hit it, but it just didn't stick, and so it fell off. And I was like, gosh dang it. And I did it again, and it hit it and made it easy, but I still did 30 burpees on there. So
awesome.
Yeah, it was fun though.
So let's shift to the book, man. Speaking of a student, you wrote, I thought one of the most impressive things, and I felt this way about you since I'd met you, as it says in your preface, so it doesn't have a page number, but in the beginning of your book it says, I'm simply lucky to be enough to be a messenger. As I'm writing this, I learned that there's a long tradition of this kind of book, from Aristotle, Discourse, how do you say
Epictetus?
Yeah, sounds good. Discourse is Peter Thiel's 0 to 1, which is a phenomenal book, by the way. The great thinkers themselves didn't write this; a student did. And then, what I found very impressive by you is you really do display, and I've met you in person, so and we've had a lot of communication, and I feel I'm a good judgment of character. You really do approach life from a very grateful perspective, and also from a student / you really embrace teaching, but not from a I'm better than you perspective. You really have a great way of of coming out. And so this book was written very phenomenally in that kind of setting. So where does this kind of mindset come from, Louis, that you, and this kind of character of yours, that you have that?
I think it comes from never feeling like I was smart growing up, and especially in school, I was always in the bottom of my class, and I just felt insecure about my knowledge and my wisdom in schoolwork, and I didn't think I was a capable student with classwork. And as I started to develop as an athlete and realized, wow, I'm actually a great learner, and I apply knowledge really well with my body and with sports and with other things, not just like reading and writing. I realized that, okay, I'm actually a great student. I just need to learn something that excites me, and then I apply it with the best of them. And so I think I just was, I realized that I created and was in a position to have a lot of opportunities. And then I was able to achieve a lot of my dreams, which for me was such an amazing feeling to do. And I'm so grateful that I did them, because I was never the biggest, fastest, or strongest. Right. I was never smart by any means in terms of schoolwork. And so when I would achieve the things that I thought were, improbable, it was just a humbling and gracious experience. And I realized the more grateful I am, the better I feel about myself, and the more I constantly learn and share with others what I'm learning, as opposed to saying, hey, I know this all already and I'm the best at it. I'm saying, this is what I've learned through this, and this, and I'm going to share it with you because I'm grateful to have learned it and what it's done for me. I just think it's a better way to approach life.
Yeah.
And, in my early 20s, I had a very cocky, egotistical approach to life, where I thought I knew it all and had that energy and attitude. And it didn't work for me. People thought I was cocky, and, it didn't work in relationships, and it didn't work for my relationship with myself. I felt very lonely at nights. I felt very insecure and unsure and uncertain and depressed and angry and resentful. And I didn't know why. I knew that I was driven and passionate, but I didn't know why those other feelings were happening. And when I started to shift my energy and mentality towards gratitude and appreciation for everything, then, I started to have a better relationship with myself.
That's awesome. So why the book now? What was the thought process there?
8 years ago, I had a dream of this book essentially coming out. I didn't know what the book would be called, or that it was going to be this book, but I had a dream that I was going to write a book essentially about, a personal development type book. I just didn't have the skills or the results or the emotional fitness at that time to put something out, or the audience or anything. But I just knew that's kind of like that I developed a lot as an athlete and learned things that I felt like my peers weren't getting in terms of life. And again, not that I was like above anyone or had better results, but I just felt like I thought differently.
Yeah, you saw things. I mean, we're in the same. I mean, I'm 40, but we're in the same sphere of peers, right? So
yes.
It's just like, wow. There's a lot of perceptual or points of views that I look at and I shake my head, so.
Exactly. And then, and what I started to learn, coming out of when I was 22 and graduating college or whatever, or leaving college to go play sports, and every year that I continued to pursue my dreams, I would connect with my peers from college who were better than me, who were smarter than me, who were faster and had more talent than me. And they weren't pursuing their dreams. They were kind of like, let's say, not settling, but just not giving their best potential out there. And I didn't understand why. Like, I was just like, why would you do that when you have all this potential? And again, it's not right or wrong or good or bad. It's just like, I just didn't understand it. And I started to, the older I got, the older we all got, and the more results and, recognition and success and money that I was bringing in, and my former classmates were essentially not getting those results that they really wanted, I noticed that they were more resentful, more jealous, wouldn't return my calls, I could just sense this energy that they were always talking behind my back type of feeling. And I just didn't get it. I was just like, why are they acting this way? Why is this happening? Why aren't they going after what they want? And why are they making me bad for achieving, my dreams?
Because that's the pattern that persists in our whole world is,
Yeah.
tear the house down next to you to make your house look prettier.
Yeah, exactly. So, I never really understood it, but I was just like, I obviously, I think differently. It's not right or wrong or good or bad. It's just I'm thinking differently, what I realized is I was so committed to learning and growth, whereas a lot of my peers, some of them did as well, but a lot of them were fixed in the way that things were happen in the world.
Right.
And that's why they probably were going down a different path. And so I was just so committed to growth and learning and building relationships with people that inspired me, and taking risks and traveling, and so it was just a different mentality. And I realized, like, okay, there's a lot of people who are now asking me how I'm doing it. Just my friends were asking me, then other people that I started to build relationships with online, and my audience were like, okay, how are you doing it? And I was just like, well, this is what I'm learning from these mentors. This is what I'm learning from my experiences of messing up. This is what I'm learning about myself when I try something. And I just started sharing it. And then I built a business, a multiple 7-figure business with someone that I had eventually sold. And I was just like, what's next for me? What's next for me? This was about 3.5 years ago. And I was just like, what's next? And I said, I want to do a podcast because I feel like this is a great platform for me to build an audience and share a message. Not my message, but the message of the people that I'm already great friends with, who are essentially my mentors in life, and who can teach and share the wisdom that they have. And I just felt like I could do a great job facilitating my curiosity into getting the right information out there in a packaged way that so people could consume it and apply it to their life. And I think that's what I've done really well, is being a facilitator of that, and then sharing it with people so they can understand it. Because there's a lot of these great people that I have on who I'm like, they're too philosophical, or they're too, they might be too intelligent for people to understand. They might be whatever. And I feel like I can communicate in a way that the average dumb man like myself, can understand and relate to. And then also someone who's really intelligent can conceptualize and consume in their life as well. And so I think I've, done a good job of just working really hard over the last 8 years of developing that skill so that I can share that gift with the world.
And one of the reasons why this comes across so well with your in the book and your stories and your exercises is what you were kind of describing there too, is like with Tim Perrin from that one book Mastery. I gotta find him. I refer to him like weekly, and but I do. He's he's older now, but he calls it the island theory, where like you're moving from a group of islands to this other group of islands that's in the distance, and there's this period where you're all alone and you're floating, and it feels like you don't know really if you're moving in the right direction, but you just got to know there's another place that you do belong. In some ways, you've taken these lessons and just created your world of School of Greatness in all your members and listeners, where they get to kind of shortcut and get on the shoulders of giants by following the stuff you're doing. So that's pretty awesome.
Thanks.
It's pretty awesome. So what surprised you? This is actually I'll ask this question in a second. If you only had 5 minutes, you were asked to speak at a conference, and they said you need to tell one story out of your book that's not about you, but like one of the people you write about. Because you have, I was reading this, and I'm like, wow, he has so many, like, you're very well read or well studied. Can you give one story that would highlight what kind of this all means, and someone that inspires you and stuff like that?
Yeah, a story that's in the book that's not about me.
That's not about you. Yeah. And I would just keep it with go for it.
I would say I'd tell the story of my brother, who was a child prodigy, a violinist, classical violinist, and won every national competition from whatever ages 10 to 16 in his age group. And then he got a full ride scholarship to pretty much every university he wanted to go to. He went to Ohio State, They actually paid him to go there. They gave him a scholarship, and then he got these grants because he was just so gifted as a classical violinist. They paid him money every month to live and to do other things. His end of his freshman year at Ohio State, he got caught selling drugs to an undercover cop.
Wow.
He sold LSD to an undercover cop, and the judge wanted to set an example of him. So at 19 years old, he was sentenced 6 to 25 years in prison for selling LSD. And it was, how old was I? I was 8 years old. And I never, being a white middle-class suburban neighborhood, you didn't hear about other people that went to jail or prison.
Yeah.
Unless you were watching movies. And I was, it was a struggle as the youngest child. My oldest brother was my hero, was now in prison. Every week we drove 2.5 hours to go visit him in the visitor room with all the other convicts. And it was just like a shocking experience for this young kid, to go and see my hero in prison every week and be around that energy. It was heartbreaking, but also full of hope at the same time. I would see these inmates who had been in there for 10, 20 years, with their families, with, some of them were praying, some of them had the Bible, some of them were just hanging out and having a good time. And I would look around the room and I was just like, man, these guys don't seem like that bad of guys. Like, they were friendly, they would smile, they were, they just seemed like, if my brother is in here, he's not a bad guy. And a lot of these guys don't seem like that bad of guys. And, he had a challenge. He joined the prison band, and it was an all black band. He's, the only white member of the band. And he learned, only playing classical his whole life, he learned, soul and hip hop and jazz and funk and R&B
Wow.
and pop and all these other gospel, because that's what this band played. They would sing from their soul and play from their soul and their heart, because they were prisoners, and they would sing about freedom. And so one of the cool things is my brother, they had some special privileges, this band, and every 6 months they were able to go play at a public park for the community for free. And so I would see my brother essentially as a free man out in the world, up behind, away from prison grounds, playing his heart out.
Wow.
For a couple hours, essentially as a free man in front of a public audience. And he got out in 4.5 years on good behavior. And that's when the real challenge began. It wasn't when he was in prison, it was when he got out of prison, because now he had this stigma. He's always going to be an ex-convict for the rest of his life. And he's always going to be looked at that by people, essentially. And he had, all of his college years were gone. Those times where you can develop and learn and go to parties. Like, he didn't get to experience any of that. He was behind bars, essentially a grown man at 19 years old with 40-year-old men who had done some really bad, dark things. And I realized at that time, for the next few years, it was really inspiring to see how someone can bounce back from extreme adversity. You think about prison, it's probably one of the most degrading, humiliating, dishonoring things you can do for your family and for yourself.
Yeah.
And to think about it, he came out of it so humble and so grateful, and not mad or angry about going to prison, really almost appreciative of going there, and so focused on what he was going to become and who he was going to be, to redeem himself for his family, for his name, for his career. And, he knocked on doors one by one to go perform jazz at local restaurants and pubs or whatever it may be. He made his own money by work, hustle, and reputation for being a great jazz violinist and building quality relationships. And something that he taught me early on, I'd go watch him after he got out of prison at these local jazz clubs and bars with 15 people in them. And in between sets, he would come out with his CDs. He made a CD, and so he'd come out with the CDs and say thank you to every person that came. And he would put a CD in their hand and say, will you buy my CD to support me?
Wow.
If you enjoy my music. And he would stand there almost uncomfortably with zero shame and say, will you buy my CD? And people would either say yes or no, but he would just stand there until they'd make a decision on if they would buy. And that showed me early on, like, wow, someone is this passionate about his performance, his art, his craft, that he's willing to stand in front of each person and ask for the sale afterwards. And it showed me like the art of shameless hustle and shameless self-promotion and the power of it to survive. And, he had a child at that time, and he's married with 2 kids now, and he needed to survive, and he was willing, he didn't care what he looked like, what people thought of him, any of that, because he was committed to his art and to making a full-time living around it. And that was an inspiring story for me.
That's a beautiful story, man. That's a beautiful story. Wow. Wow is all I can say.
Yeah.
Wow. How's he doing today?
He's doing great. He's 43 now. He's, arguably ranked as the #1 jazz violinist in the world by a number of different publications and magazines. He played with Les Paul for 10 years, and for those that are into the jazz or the guitar world, Les Paul guitars are the most famous guitars made, and he has played with all over the world. He tours constantly. He does commercials, music for movies. He's on other people's albums, and he has a festival that he does once a year in Columbus, Ohio, where professional violinists come from all over the world to learn jazz from him. And he constantly goes back to high schools and colleges and teaches how to be a better violinist and better musician as well throughout the years. So he's always giving back.
That's great, dude. That is awesome. Yeah. I look forward to meeting him someday.
Yeah, absolutely.
What surprised you most about the book process? And I'm actually going to specifically lead you to the promotional end, just because we have a lot. I really actually, no, I'll let you answer that free flowing. So on the writing side, research side, promoting, negotiating with publishers, getting support from friends, anything. You can go wherever you want with it.
I have one vision. Well, let me say 2 visions. Let me say this. The first vision was, if I'm going to write a book, I want it to impact millions of people around the world. I was like, I want to do it so people actually read it and they take action and they're inspired. So I got to create an amazing book first, and I got to figure out what that is. And that was essentially a 4-year process from signing with an agent to sending in my first proposal for the book.
Yeah.
And which the first book title was called The Gift. 4 years ago, actually, when he just sent me this like a few weeks ago, my first proposal I sent to him. And it took 3 iterations of proposals over 3 years until I got to the proposal I got to, where we were like, I felt comfortable with it, he felt great with it, and we said, now it's time to take it to the publishers and go for the rounds. And it all worked in the time frame that it was supposed to. If I had sold this book 4 years ago, I wouldn't have been emotionally ready. I didn't have the platform yet or the results really to make it, to achieve my second vision, which was to be a New York Times bestseller.
Right.
And I realized at this point, I'd done a self-published book around LinkedIn, 7 years ago. Then I did another Kindle ebook on webinars. And those were like niche-related books to build expertise. And I realized, like, if I'm going to do another book right now, I want to reach the masses, the mainstream media, and I want it to be a credible, powerful piece of work for everyone who reads it. And so I just said, it's not worth just putting out a book to put out a book. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to create, championship-type results. And that means I got to find a championship team to make it happen, because I can't do it on my own. So the first step was the agent, and the agent that came to mind was when I first had the idea for this book 8 years ago. I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, and I was just blown away by it at the time. It was the perfect catalyst for me when I was injured in a cast, had no clue what I was doing next in my life after football. And I just said, this book blew my mind and created opportunities that I didn't even know were possible for my life. Whoever this agent is, I need to find out who it is, and he's going to be my agent one day. And I stalked him for years and would email him on Facebook and like his photos and comment on stuff, and met with him in person eventually and told him one day he's going to be my agent. And then one day he actually approached me and said, it's time we do a book together. So he was kind of following my growth over, a 4-year period as well to see where I would end up. And so I got the all-star agent that I wanted. Then I said I need an all-star publishing house that's really going to be behind my vision. And so we met with 8 different publishers. I wrote the proposal with someone. I had someone help me write the proposal, a guy who had written for the New York Times for 20 years. So I said, okay, I've got the right writer to help me craft this message and position it. And that cost a lot of time and money. And then we went and pitched it to all these publishers for 3 days in New York City. And this was where I would say where I thrived the most. When you throw me in a room of people that either know about me or don't know about me and are interested in something, I feel like this is what I was born to do. I was born to perform and promote myself. And I developed this, again, if this would happen a few years earlier, I wouldn't have been ready. But I developed enough emotional fitness and, I guess, personal psychological understanding of humans that I felt so comfortable in all these rooms with the biggest names in publishing, who probably would have terrified me a couple of years prior. And it was just like a fun game. It wasn't like I was playing anyone, but it was a fun game to be able to shift and evolve. And some people were super welcoming and happy and loving, and other people had their arms crossed and were dance for me monkey type of energy. Yeah. And it was fun to just be able to shift and evolve and see how I can flex my personality style to meet each person where they're at and not expect them to be where I'm at. And it all happened in perfect timing, I think, for this book. And so we had a few different people offering to buy the book. And I remember I wanted it to be between essentially 2 publishers, Rodale and Hay House, because they understood direct marketing better than any other publisher at the time. And they had email lists, and they had publications, and they had joint partnerships, what I felt like would have been perfect for where I'm at right now. So I got the deal I wanted from Rodale, and they have been incredible. I would say it was 90% what I wanted. There was maybe 10% of things where there was some friction here and there, but 90% of everything that I was dreamed of for a publisher, they were there for. And I don't have anything to compare it to because I haven't worked with another publisher, but based on the feedback I get from all my author friends, they have nightmare stories about their publisher. And so I'm super grateful and pleased with them. And I just felt the energy. It's like an all-woman team, essentially, and they're just very loving and they want to support my vision and mission. So it was a great collaboration. And and from there, I had essentially about 12 points that I've been researching for years. This was not a thing on accident. For years, I've been studying bestseller campaigns. And going to conferences and events and buying programs and products about how to really market books. So I had about 12 main points that I realized that I needed to implement to make this the best it could be to hit the New York Times list. And I just created a game plan around each of those points, built a team around them, and then executed to the best of my abilities. And that's essentially the game plan that I launched with.
I love it, dude. I love it. And I think I am going, for time's sake, I'm going to ask in 6 months or 10 months we jump back on and just only talk about that, because I just read your most recent blog, and I have pages of notes and questions on just that one topic.
Sure. Yeah.
I want to ask this question, and then this will probably be we have 2 left, and then I want to respect your time. But with your podcast, getting access to these celebrities, and for everyone listening, you just have to go and subscribe to Lewis's School of Greatness podcast on iTunes and download and share everything he does, because his quality of guests are amazing. The question I had when you were talking about approaching the agent, and I had read, I don't know if was it in your book or wherever no, it was one of your podcasts, you talk about your plan. And when you approach these, I would say people that you would like to get something from, and they're high profile people because you're moving up the ladder or chain or something like that. What's your mental operating view of that when you're going to ask for something, or how do you approach it mentally?
It's how can I serve them in the things that they love the most in this moment, so that they're willing to come on and promote what they want to talk about. And so I try to do as much research around, a lot of the people I have on are, New York Times bestselling authors. And the reason I got Tony Robbins, which he never does any interviews, is because he had a new book that came out once in 10 years that came out. And I said, this is my opportunity to get him on. And so I reached out to the appropriate people and said, I know he's doing podcasts and press and things like that. Here's what I can offer. Here's the downloads I get. Here's how many books I've sold for people in the past. I'd love to have him on. And so that's how I made that happen. And that's the approach I have with essentially anyone. It's like, hey, I want to share your story unfiltered. And in the process, let's promote your book, your album, your new TV show, whatever it may be. And whenever they have something to launch, they're open to doing these interviews more and more. And so it's just about positioning and also showing the credibility of who else I've had on, and that social proof helps. I've got Alanis Morissette and Ariana Huffington and Scooter Braun. It's like it helps to know that if these people have done it, then obviously, maybe I should do it too. And I always come from a place of relationship building, adding value. Ed, you've been incredible with me, Ed, just adding value. You didn't know me from anywhere, and you've supported the book in a huge way and asked me to come on, and I was like, absolutely.
Oh, thanks,
I don't know if this podcast is going to do anything for me, but you've been such a huge support and a great friend, and without asking for anything, that I'm like, of course I'm going to support back however I can. And I think that's the mentality that I take, is just how can I serve other people? How can I give? How can I promote other people without asking for anything from them? And then, eventually if I have something, I'm going to reach out and ask it, at the appropriate time when it makes sense, to build that relationship. So
yeah, I think we're in a society that does not understand that value of, it may take me 2 years of building value for a lot of people, and I may only ask for a small ask, but having that built in, Harvey Mackay, if you go back to his initial, you on your book tour, you did the grassroots old school model, bro. I mean, no one does that anymore.
I know.
And it just was so impressive. I mean, if you ever listen to Wayne Dyer's story of how he packed the books in his back, in his first book, Your Erroneous Notes, he packed all the books in his trunk and went town to town, and you did the modified version of that, so it was so impressive.
It's interesting. The reason I did that was one of the things I wanted to do. A lot of people were like, book tours are dead. You're not going to get any sales. It's going to be a waste of your time. You're not going to be able to leverage your time. And I said the most powerful thing today still is face-to-face. And yes, it may not be able to leverage it as much by traveling and spending the money on my own to fly and book these hotels. But these are people that I haven't met yet, who have been listening. Some of the people who have been listening to the podcast since day one,
right? That
are my biggest supporters and share the message of my podcast more than anyone else. I was like, I want to show up for them the way they've shown up for me. And when I was in Chicago, I had the flu. I was trying to hide it, but I was sick as a dog. And I did 3 events that day where I met you.
Yeah.
And it was just it was miserable. All I wanted to do was sleep all day, but I was committed to my vision of being there for the people that have been there for me for years. And it was such a joy. Even when I was coughing between each person I was saying hi to, it was such a pleasure to be able to give back and be of service to people who have been there for me.
And don't you think most people nowadays especially are sitting there even unconsciously saying, okay, is this person the real deal? They read the book, they see the video, And I was there at what's the famous chef's restaurant, or what's his name? Fabio, who was totally awesome as well. Like
super nice.
If I would have seen him on a TV show, I might say, oh, he seems cool. But no, I met him. He sat down and was like, it was so nice. And so, but the excitement of all the people to get to meet you. I mean, you've probably built in so much grassroots level, like the matches on fire type, like kindling that I mean, it's gonna pay off. We always found out, like in our Dennis Profits company where I was coaching Dennis, if we got them, I should just reframe it. If I got to meet them face to face and they came to one of our startup events, they would be 5 times more valuable. And I should reframe that too, is just they would stay with me 5 times longer than virtual people. It just was just truth,
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, well, you're amazing. I wanna last question, just throw it out to you. What is next for Lewis Howes, and how can people follow you?
I've got 3 things I'm excited about this year. I'm excited about a lot of things, but 3 main things I'm talking about. One is I'm going to start an annual conference for my community called the Summit of Greatness.
Yep.
And it's going to be in Columbus, Ohio in October. We're about to put the down pause on all the venues and figure out the exact date soon. But the Summit of Greatness, I'm going to bring the most inspiring speakers in the world together to talk about how to unleash your greatness. So I'm excited about that. And I'm also excited about, I'm launching the biggest course program that I've ever done, the one that I've been thinking about for years. And it's going to be essentially about how to build your online empire and build a legacy you've always wanted to create around your passion. And it's something that I get asked questions on a lot. People come to me a lot for is how to do this. So I'm going to create the full program with all the documentation and training that you need to launch your online business. So I'm excited about that. That'll be probably mid-year. And then I'm also creating, this is more like a fun thing, I'm creating a merchandise store for School of Greatness gear and inspiring t-shirts and things like that. So that'll be another thing I'm launching soon.
Yeah, awesome. I think they're all fantastic. And obviously, my universe will support you in every single way. So
I appreciate it. Yeah.
So we got lewishowes.com, which will have the show links there, but it's LEWISHOWES.com. And then with School of Greatness podcast, and then get on Amazon and buy that book. I bought a lot of them.
Thank you very much for that.
And we're gonna be doing some.
You're giving them away for a while, huh?
Yeah, we're gonna be doing some more. I'll probably do a promo at the end of this too. But all right, bro, you are the best. I appreciate you, and I can't wait to see what awesomeness you create in the next 12 months and beyond.
Thanks so much, Ed. I appreciate you.
This episode is sponsored by Marine D3. If you want 24-hour antioxidant protection while giving your brain, eyes, heart, and overall energy a jolt of long-lasting nourishment, then Marine D3 is for you. This is my number 1 top-selling health product that I've sold over 500,000 bottles, and right now, 80% of our sales come from repeat customers. Marine D3 can flood your cells with an abundance of new antioxidants and nutrients that fights and repairs damage done to the cells during exercise, everyday living, and the natural breakdown that occurs as we age. After 15 years of research and over $39 million spent on clinical studies, a renowned biochemist has found one of the world's greatest antioxidants. It's called Cena, hiding deep below the ocean surface. I took Cena, combined it with a little-known omega-3 called calamine, as well as vitamin D3, so that you can get maximum benefit all in one supplement. I'd like to give you the first bottle absolutely free. I just ask that you pay shipping and handling. At edokeefeshow.com/free bottle, I'll have a mini presentation that will share more about the supplement and why people are raving about it. Most importantly, it'll show you exactly how you can get it shipped out to you today, just for shipping and handling. This episode is brought to you by Dormant Forces Insider. If you would like monthly big business breakthroughs, insider marketing strategies that actually work, and mindset secrets of multimillionaires sent directly to your door so you can have it in your hands and you can apply them, then this is for you. Now, you can test drive my Dormant Forces Insider Silver membership for just 1 month free. If you love it, we know you'll stay with it and let it keep you in the loop of what's working inside my businesses and the other dozens and dozens of businesses that I mentor. Why would you go at it all on your own when you can use other people's experience than just replicate what works? Anyhow, right now you can test drive the membership for just $1 plus a few bucks shipping and handling by going to edokeefeshow.com/dormant forces. That's edokeefeshow.com/dormant forces.